Welcome to my messy studio. My name is Mark, and I'm an artist and an art professor. And in this video, I'm going to deviate from my usual technical instruction and talk about the 10 pitfalls which many developing artists fall into, which prevent them from reaching their fullest potential. I'm entering my 20th year of teaching at the university level, and often encounter these issues in my students. I'm also entering my 30th year of being a practicing artist, and have identified these faults in myself. So the plan here is to talk about those pitfalls without offering you the usual nonsense that you probably already heard, like you're not drawing every single day. I should also say, at the risk of driving you away, that I'm not talking about simple technical pitfalls, like you're not holding your pencil the right way, or you're not stepping back to look at your entire drawing. I have plenty of technical instruction for you if that's what you're looking for. But in this video, we're talking about psychological pitfalls, because really, developing as an artist is not just about technique. It's also about developing the correct mindset, a combination of discipline, humility, and curiosity that will allow you to grow, persevere, and achieve success in your specific artistic journey. Okay, let's talk about the first pitfall. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you briefly about my YouTube membership program. For a small monthly subscription, channel members access 2 long-form tutorials per month on a variety of topics and have priority to have their art-related questions answered. Okay, back to the regularly scheduled programming. This is something that I often see in my more advanced students who are trying their hands at ambitious work but are somehow lacking the basic skills required to get them there, either because they never learned them properly or did at some point but didn't maintain them. What are those basic skills? Observational drawing. Drawing still life, landscape, and the figure. Weakness in these skills poisons everything, and more than anything else will keep you from achieving your artistic goals. The problem is that for many people, observational drawing is difficult, repetitive, tedious, and, let's face it, kind of boring. And what's worse, it's not really what that specific student wants to do artistically. Because of this, people complete those classes and feel a tremendous sense of relief, thinking, thank God, I don't have to go through that ordeal again. Then they set about doing their work and forget that those skills need constant maintenance, and that even if you're working in a less than realistic style, let's say something inspired by expressionism or manga, you still need observational drawing because it underpins absolutely everything you do. As I see it, observational drawing is a little bit like the strength and conditioning program a professional athlete needs to follow in order to compete at the highest level of their sport. Yes, that athlete needs to spend a lot of time practicing basketball or tennis or whatever. But without the road work and time in the weight room, that athlete will not be in peak physical condition. I think this is a perfectly fitting analogy because nothing builds your manual dexterity, your sensitivity to color and value, and your innate understanding of composition like observational drawing, which in turn allows you to work at your very highest level. So my advice is to draw from observation as much as possible. You don't need to draw every single day. Draw people, draw places, draw things. Use your favorite materials, or use this as an opportunity to try new mediums. Think of it as a necessary part of your artistic practice that'll keep your skills razor sharp for anything you want to do. Before we talk about this one, we need to understand the difference between a manner and a style. One way of thinking about it is to imagine someone speaking in a very fake, affected way. So here in California, people tend to use something called upspeak, where everything they say sounds like a question, or vocal fry, where everything they say ends like this. In the majority of cases, people don't actually speak this way, and when you get to know them, you find that they speak in a way that's a natural consequence of their upbringing and education. A manner, therefore, is something fake, something acquired quickly, usually emulating something wholesale that they've seen somewhere else. Whereas a style develops slowly and is an organic process, a consequence of a long journey of experimentation, inspiration, and practice. I realize that the distinction is not easy to identify, but the main issue with taking on a manner is not so much that the former is fake while the other is somehow authentic. It's that a manner is usually acquired very early in a student's training where they are still building their foundational skills, and more often is a way of avoiding weaknesses. So if a student has poor rendering skills, they will choose a manner that's linear. If a student is bad at working slowly and patiently, they'll choose a manner that is loose and fast. And if a student is poor at color, they'll choose a manner that relies on simple color schemes. Having arrived on a manner, the student has successfully worked around all the deficiencies in their skill and will stop improving their fundamentals, going back to the pitfall number 1, and will stop growing. While some artists are very successful in their manner, there's a risk there. Manners are usually chosen because they happen to be fashionable at the moment. But since tastes change quickly, an artist might find themselves trapped in a style that no longer sells and without the necessary skill to do something else. So unfortunately, this advice can't come at the expense of early success because manners are, again, often flashy and fashionable. But in the long term, taking the necessary time to develop basic skills and grow organically will allow you to develop a style that's more nuanced, authentic, and sustainable over the course of your entire artistic life. I've met a lot of very different successful artists over the years. Animators, cartoonists, realists, expressionists, painters of abstraction, people who see and interpret the world in many different ways. But one thing they have in common is that they keep a sketchbook and work in it religiously. For some, the sketchbook is an end in itself, a place where they create finished work for display on social media or even in galleries. For others, it's a tool which allows them to develop their ideas and play with different mediums and techniques. And for others, it's a place to simply screw around, to doodle and to dream without any purpose whatsoever. I'm of the second and third school of sketchbooking, but however you use it, a sketchbook is the place where you take all of the tools you've learned in your classes and see how they fit into your practice. Most importantly, the sketchbook is a place where you can be completely fearless. As crucial as the sketchbook is, I've encountered many students that either don't have a sketchbook or have one but have not developed the habit and discipline to work in it regularly. This is a pitfall because not only a sketchbook is a place to get extra practice, it's a place where true growth happens, where you start to think about what you want to say as an artist. So, if you're only doing work for a class, great, but I'm sorry to say that's not enough. Get yourself a sketchbook and draw in it. As mentioned, many people treat their sketchbooks as works of art. If you wish to do that, keep a separate sketchbook for that purpose, and have a sketchbook for the purpose of actually sketching. Doodle, draw from imagination, observation, memory, do studies for larger works, or practice a skill that needs strengthening. Most important, don't forget to experiment and take major risks. I think once you develop a serious sketchbooking habit, it will stay with you the rest of your life. That everyone wants to get better is a universal truth, and I have yet to come across anyone in any endeavor that wants to get worse at what they do. The problem is that in art, one sometimes needs to get worse when acquiring a skill in order to get better, and the fear and discomfort of being worse in the short term prevents many people from achieving improvement in the long term. A very simple case in point is something called the thumb and forefinger grip. Most students in my beginning drawing classes already have some drawing experience, some having drawn from childhood. But they're usually comfortable holding their pencils the way they were taught in grade school, like this. And while this is a perfectly good way of holding a pencil, there are other ways which confer various advantages. One alternative is something called the thumb and forefinger grip, where you hold the pencil like so. This type of grip allows you to engage your entire shoulder, improving line quality, particularly in larger drawings. It also allows for better control of pressure, an important thing when using softer drawing materials like charcoal. The problem is that this grip feels clumsy and uncomfortable at first, and believe it or not, actually makes you draw worse for a time before you get used to it. And all you can do is suffer with sloppy, crude drawings before you start seeing the benefits of this grip. For some people, this is no problem at all, but for a significant number, the prospect of drawing worse, even for a time, is so painful that they avoid this grip and never learn how to use it. This is just one example, and there are very, very many. I've seen students that are comfortable working small and produce very good work, but when asked to work large, find it uncomfortable and never learn to do it. I've encountered students that are used to harder drawing materials like graphite, but when faced with something softer like charcoal, find it uncomfortable and as a result never learn to use it. Some students enjoy working fast and find working slower uncomfortable and never learn to do it. These are just a very small sample of how the self-defeating fear of temporary discomfort can block your progress. Because in your training, you will encounter a seemingly endless barrage of methodologies and techniques that will initially make you worse, and unless you're able to push through the pain and discomfort and even shame of producing work that doesn't meet your standard, you will not grow as an artist. This actually describes two distinct pitfalls. The first relates to technique, the second to the creative process. The technical pitfall is to dive into a work of art without thinking beforehand how to go about it. While there are artists who somehow manage to pull it off, it's usually through a very inefficient workflow with many mistakes requiring a lot of changes, resulting in a work that took way more time to make than it should have. This is because any image, whether it's a simple 30-minute drawing using a single pencil or a complex multimedia creation that takes months to make, requires a step-by-step process. Art making asks you to do a lot of things exactly right, and by breaking things down into steps, it allows you to focus on small tasks and do each one better. Without this breakdown, there are way too many things to consider all at once, increasing the chance that you'll make a mistake. There are many reasons why an artist might choose to work unsystematically. It might on occasion be a question of temperament. Some artists don't enjoy planning things out and like the spontaneity and risk of working on the fly. But more often than not, it has to do with early educational trauma. Often early in an artist's training, they were taught a process that they felt uncomfortable with, one that, to go back to the last pitfall, made them worse. But there are lots of other reasons that have nothing to do with fear of getting worse, which we'll place in the category of not being a good fit for that particular student. Whatever the reason, the failure to acquire a specific process sometimes makes students think that all instruction that makes you break things down into steps is flawed, and that it's way better to be unsystematic in the way you do things. And then, the more time they spend working in an unsystematic way, the more it becomes comfortable for them, and the harder it is to break this bad habit. But here is the main difficulty. No system, no matter how popular it is going to be perfect for you. And part of your growth as an artist, and part of why it takes so long to develop, is that you have to develop your own way of breaking things down into steps, one that is best suited for the kind of work you wish to make. This is a question of learning, but really learning. Different kinds of approaches, yes, even ones you find uncomfortable, taking on what you need from them, discarding what you don't, and then, after long trial and error and refinement, arriving at a system that works for you. The second aspect of this pitfall is conceptual, relating to the way artists come up with ideas. Well, to some artists, ideas come fully formed, and all they have to do is transfer what they have in their head onto a surface. Us mere mortals usually require a creative system. This process will look different for every artist, but generally follow the same pattern, starting from an initial idea, which, through a series of refining steps, develops into something fully formed. I describe my system for creating pictures in one of my tutorials, which I'll link to below. But in short, I start off with concept thumbnails, which are then refined through compositional studies, preliminary, and final sketches. This is a process that I teach my students, and right after I teach them, I tell them this. This is a process that I have developed over my 30 years of working, one that works for me. It's a mashup of things I've learned from my instructors and things that I've discovered for myself. Try it several times and make note of which steps are useful and which can be adjusted to be more effective for the type of work you wish to make, with the aim of eventually developing your own way of creating work. And that's my advice to you. Don't be unsystematic in the way you develop ideas. Start thinking about what system you use to create work now, because this is a process that's going to take years and years and years. This is a big topic, and there are three aspects to it. The first is being a good receiver of criticism. The second is being a good giver of criticism. And the third is being a participant in critiques in general. Art is a very vulnerable thing, and having your work subjected to intense scrutiny can be a frightening experience. And that's of course very natural, since art is very personal, and nothing is more closely associated with our sense of self-worth other than perhaps our personal appearance. The problem is that feedback is absolutely crucial to your growth as an artist, and without it, we can wallow in seemingly obvious mistakes for years without realizing them. The way one can spend an entire day with spinach in one's teeth and not know it until it's pointed out to you. So, recognizing the feedback is absolutely crucial. We have to learn how to deal with it properly. This, of course, assumes that you're in a healthy critique environment where the group is knowledgeable and fully committed to honest and helpful critique. If it's in any way otherwise, if you think your place of critique is a place where instructors enjoy bullying their students and encourage the students to bully each other, then please seek the nearest exit. A toxic, abusive environment is not conducive to learning, no matter how effective the actual instruction is. The pitfall lies in that even when the critique is specific, constructive, and comes from a base of knowledge, some students will take it as a personal attack, will become either defensive or shut down entirely, especially if that criticism is not delivered in a very gentle way. This again is understandable because our art comes from a very personal place. So here is my advice. During critiques, pretend that the work is not yours, and that you're seeing it for the very first time, just like everyone else. I like to joke with my students by telling them to think of your work as being done by a close friend. You like your friend, you want your friend to do well, but if the work is criticized, it's okay because it's not actually yours. In all seriousness, this is not an easy thing to do. It needs to be practiced. But if you can get into that psychological space and distance yourself, it'll allow you to listen to critique with impartiality, take in what's needed, and, this is important, reject what isn't. That's right, you need to be open to criticism, but still be critical enough to know when the criticism is not valid. How do you know when the advice is good or not? Sometimes you don't, but this is where a good instructor helps. As an instructor, when I hear something insightful during critique, I will make sure the student repeats it so that everyone can hear it, or perhaps even build off of it. I do this for two reasons. First, to hint to the person being critiqued that the point might be valid and important, and two, to encourage the person giving the critique to provide even more valuable insight. Having a knowledgeable instructor who leads the critiques, who guides and encourages the students to participate in a very constructive way is key. And there's a balance there. If the instructor is doing all the talking, then the students can't participate, which is problematic. However, if there's no guidance by the instructor whatsoever, the critique becomes a free-for-all with lots of feedback that becomes digressive or less than valuable. Which brings me to the second part of the pitfall. It's not only important to know how to take criticism, but also how to give it. Students often zone out during critiques and simply wait until it's their turn. This is a huge, huge mistake because the process of looking intently at other people's work and asking what can be done to make it better helps build one's own critical faculties, which can in turn be directly applied to one's own work. As such, it's critically important not to fall asleep during critiques. Stay active and try as much as you can to think about each and every piece from this perspective. The more rounds of this you do, the more it builds your problem-solving abilities, and the better you'll be able to, when the time is right, look at your own work with impartiality and distance, and decide exactly what needs to be done to make it better. Which leads me to the third aspect of this pitfall, which is that you should not only be good at giving and receiving criticism, but you should also listen to what everyone else is saying. Again, not everything being said is valid, but often things come up that are directly applicable to your own work, and not listening during critiques is a missed learning opportunity. I think the critique has developed a bad reputation in the last few decades, with many art classes becoming entirely overwhelmed by hours-long critiques, where every work of art is subjected to a ridiculous degree of scrutiny. But with the right instructor who keeps things moving, one who creates a dynamic, collaborative critiquing environment where everyone makes an effort to participate, the critique can be an extremely powerful learning tool. One which, more than anything else, is why in-person learning in an actual classroom is superior to online instruction. A lot of students will enter a classroom and watch the instruction without asking a single question. We'll go through the in-class exercises without a single question, and leave the class without having asked a single question. Then they'll return the following week with their homework assignments in hand without a single question. Rinse and repeat. As much as I'd like to think it's because of the crystalline clarity of my instruction, what it really is what I call passive learning. Sometimes people seem to be passive learners because they're shy or afraid to admit that they don't understand something, but I suspect in an overwhelming number of cases they were not sufficiently engaged to bother thinking about whether they understood the instructional content. As I see it, there are two problems with being a passive learner. The first is obvious, that no instructor teaches perfectly, and we as instructors really do need students to call us out on things we haven't explained clearly enough. The second is that a student who doesn't ask questions may come off as disengaged and disinterested, leading many instructors, consciously or not, to give them less attention. Conversely, students that ask questions, particularly thoughtful questions, not just "can you repeat this or that," appear more enthusiastic and will get more out of their instructors. Sorry, but it's true. Instructors are people too, and as much as I try to treat everyone equally, students that show interest will get more out of me than students that don't. But there's a larger problem with passive learning. In order to fully engage with the instruction, you have to use it in your own work. This means that besides doing the assigned work, you have to see how the lessons learned from the assignment apply to the stuff you're doing on your own. See how it works, and if it doesn't, come back to class with specific questions. While I'm speaking generally here, and of course not every lesson will be directly applicable to whatever you happen to be working on, coming in prepared with thoughtful questions will ensure that you will get the most out of whoever is teaching you. Yes, there's a risk that you'll come off as annoying, but in most cases, your instructor will appreciate the extra effort and, again, will give it back in return. This is, of course, deliberately in opposition to what I think is a completely unhelpful piece of advice. This New Age-sounding wisdom probably comes from yoga and is directed to new practitioners that enter a classroom and are frustrated that everyone else can put their legs behind their heads and they can't. The problem is that we can't help but compare ourselves to others, regardless of how much we tell ourselves that we're all special, we're all in a different part of our journey, we all have different advantages, so on and so forth. And because such comparisons cause tremendous insecurity, we shut down and try to ignore what's happening around us, choosing to focus on our art and our art alone, which is hugely detrimental to the learning process in a classroom environment. I see it in my classes all the time, students not looking at each other's work, ignoring the work of others during critique, just sticking their noses in their easels and pretending that they're the only ones in the room. But what if, God forbid, the person next to you is doing something really cool? What if, God forbid, you see someone that's a little better than you, and you have the humility to acknowledge it, and ask them how they did it, and learn something super useful? The fact is, learning in a classroom doesn't always have to be from the instructor to the student. It can also be student to student, if you're open to it. So my advice is absolutely compare yourself with others, but learn how to compare correctly, with the understanding that comparison is valuable only when it's limited, within the framework of a classroom where everyone is dedicated to developing a certain skill. The great thing about art making is that your skill is by no means static, and just because one person is further ahead in some specific task doesn't mean that you won't get there as well, and you can learn from their limited superiority in a specific skill. And frankly, a little competition is a healthy thing and can inspire you to work that much harder. And in a healthy competitive environment, everyone wins, with the strongest in the group helping to bring the level up for everyone. Being an artist and teaching art are separate skills, and there are very many good artists that are not great teachers, and of course, many great teachers that are not great artists. Ideally, your instructor will be equally strong in their art making and teaching skills, but no instructor is perfect. We all have our failings and sometimes struggle to explain what we're doing in a way that's comprehensible and engaging. Furthermore, demonstrations are really hard to do. You have to explain everything that you're doing in a clear, step-by-step way, keep the demo short enough not to put everyone to sleep, answer questions, all while working on a work of art with people scrutinizing and likely judging everything you do behind your back. It took me a number of years to do it confidently, and even now, once in a while, demonstrations don't go as well as I'd like. But besides teaching art being exceedingly difficult, the main issue is that, especially nowadays, many students expect to be taught exactly to their specifications. In my many years of being a student, and many more of being a teacher, I've heard all sorts of complaints about professors, that their demos take too long, or their critiques are too harsh, or that their instruction is disorganized or hard to understand. Some of the criticism is certainly valid, but here's the thing. Every single instructor has flaws. And those demanding, entitled students that desire to be taught exactly the way they want will encounter nothing but frustration. Because the chances that they'll find instructional perfection is close to none. And in their quixotic search for that perfect instructor, they will have missed a mountain of valuable instruction. So, my advice is, if you feel that an instructor has something to teach you, then let the instructor teach you the way they're comfortable. And if you think the instructor has nothing to teach you, then put your head between two slices of bread and make an idiot sandwich. Because I guarantee you, if you're dealing with an experienced instructor, someone who's been teaching for years, they absolutely have something to teach you. You only have to be patient with them and allow them to teach in their own way. Okay, I think we'll leave it at 9, even though there are many more ingenious ways to completely sabotage your progress. I'd like to conclude on a positive note, however. The fact that you're watching this video suggests that you feel like you're stuck in a rut and are worried about your improvement. But the anxiety you're feeling is a very good thing. It shows that you care deeply about your progress, avoiding the biggest pitfall of all, which, in case you're wondering, is number 10, complacency. Being perfectly happy with where you are in terms of your artistic development and not thinking about how to get better. If that's a small consolation for what you're feeling, allow me to offer an even better one. Progress is never linear. With beginners, it's very steep, since the difference between knowing nothing and a little is pretty great. But then, with each class, with each passing year, progress slows down until it comes in fits and starts, usually in the form of progress followed by periods of plateau. Those plateaus, however frustrating and painful, have to be there because they are what leads to periods of progress. And it has been my experience, not only as an instructor, but also from my own work, that my biggest breakthroughs come after periods of deep questioning and frustration, points in my life where it felt like I would never get better. So keep on trucking, everyone, avoid the pitfalls, and there's a good chance that there's an amazing breakthrough just around the corner. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please subscribe and stay tuned to more content like it. Thanks for watching, and see you back in my messy studio very soon. Bye for now.